Hi there, Dr. Sadaf Krishi here, and today we are going to talk about bones of skull. Skull is made up of several separate bones that are joined together by immobile joints that are called as sutures. There is connective tissue between these bones that is called as sutural ligament. But there is still an exception to this rule, that is mandible, as it is joined to skull by temporomandibular joint, that is mobile joint. Now let's talk about the skull bones. There are 22 different bones in skull, that are 8 cranial bones and 14 facial bones. In this part of video we will talk about 8 cranial bones, and next part of video we will talk about 14 facial bones in little bit of detail. First we will talk about 8 cranial bones, that are frontal bone, parietal bone, occipital bone, temporal bone, sphenoid bone and ethmoid bone. As we can see there, parietal bone and temporal bone are the pair bone, that means they are 2 in number, while frontal bone, occipital bone, sphenoid bone and ethmoid bone are those cranial bones that are single, that means they are 1 in number. We will start our topic with the frontal bone. As you can see in the diagrammatic representation of skull, the area shown in the purple color is the frontal bone. Frontal bone forms the anterior part of roof of cranium, and it also forms the roof of orbital cavity. Talking about its articulation, it articulates anteriorly with the nasal bone and maxillary bone. As you can see there, it is articulating with the nasal bone and maxillary bone, and it articulates laterally with the zygomatic bone and sphenoid bone. As you can see there, it is articulating laterally with the zygomatic bone and sphenoid bone, and posteriorly it articulates with the parietal bone. Here you can see a little bit there, there it is articulating with the parietal bone, but it is more visible when we see the skull from the lateral view, the posterior articulation. It also has a hollow spaces in it that are called as frontal ear sinuses. And now let's talk about the next bone, that is the parietal bone. Here we can see a little bit of the parietal bone in the frontal view. In the lateral view we can see the parietal bone more easily and more clearly. Parietal bone forms the superior and lateral part of neurocranium, and this blue area of the skull represents the parietal bone. It is paired bone, that means there are 2 in number. Talking about its articulation, it articulates in midline by sagittal suture with each other, like there is one parietal bone at one side and other parietal bone at other side, and they meet with each other in the midline at sagittal suture. Then they meet anteriorly with the they meet anteriorly with the frontal bone, and they meet posteriorly with the occipital bone. As you can see there, they are meeting anteriorly with the frontal bone, and they are meeting posteriorly with the occipital bone, and inferiorly they meet with the temporal bone and sphenoid bone. Anterior and inferiorly they meet with the sphenoid bone, and posterior and inferiorly they meet with the temporal bone. Now we will talk about the next cranial bone, that is occipital bone. Here this diagram is showing the pink area of the bone, that is occipital bone. Talking about occipital bone, it is single bone, that means it is only one bone, and this bone forms the posterior and inferior part of neurocranium. Talking about its articulation, it articulates anterior superiorly with the parietal bone and anterior inferiorly with the temporal bone. Here you can see it is articulating anterior superiorly with the parietal bone and anterior inferiorly with the temporal bone. Now let's talk about the next cranial bone, that is temporal bone. This area shown in gray color in diagram or in lateral view of the skull is the temporal bone. The thing to remember, it is the paired bone, that means there are 2 temporal bones in skull. It has important part that are squamous part, that is the flat large part that forms the side of skull, and it has mastoid part process, that is a bony projection behind the ear that contains ear cells and attached to muscle. So this area is squamous part, and there is a little projection here. Here you can see it is the mastoid part of the temporal bone or mastoid process. It also has a zygomatic process that extends forward to connect with the cheekbone, thus forming part of zygomatic arch. And it also has external acoustic meatus, that is the ear canal opening leading to the eardrum and middle ear. Then it also has stylite process, that is slender pointed piece that serve as attachment point for muscle and ligament of the tongue and neck. It also has a petrous part that houses the structures of inner ear, including the cochlea and semicircular canal, which are crucial for hearing and balance. Now let's talk about the next cranial bone, that is the sphenoid bone. This area shown in color in diagrammatic representation of skull is sphenoid bone. Sphenoid bone is unpaired bone, that means it is one in number or it is single. It is located in the midline of the skull at the back of orbits. As you can see there, it is located in the midline of skull and it is present at back of orbit. As you can see from the orbital cavity, the back area is by the sphenoid bone. This bone has following important parts: the body of sphenoid, the greater wing of sphenoid, and the lesser wing of sphenoid. And these parts are more easily appreciated when we look at the cranial cavity. Body of sphenoid also houses sphenoidal air sinuses. Now let's talk about the next cranial bone, that is ethmoid bone. Here you can see in the diagram the colored area or the colored part of bone is ethmoid bone. Ethmoid bone is single bone or unpaired bone of cranium. It separates nasal cavity from the cranial cavity. It has following important part, that is cribriform plate of ethmoid bone, perpendicular plate, and cristae galli. And it also has superior conchae of lateral wall of nasal cavity and middle conchae of the lateral wall of nasal cavity. So it has 5 main parts. So this was all about 8 cranial bones. In next video we will talk about the 14 facial bones. Thank you for watching. If you like our video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe and comment.